One story quest to investigate often leads me into another direction, and I was looking up Edgar Mitchell, the last and sixth man to walk on the moon. He spent like 9 hours up there on the moon walking around, and he couldn't remember anything about being up there, which is kind of odd. So he had to see a therapist and be hypnotized, etc. But evidently, there's been more than one astronaut who has been on missions or to the moon who can't remember the mission. So has their memory been erased? Was there an event that was so traumatic that their brains have, blocked it out? Or maybe the mission never happened. So take your pick, and here's the article. It says, has astronauts' minds been erased? In the never a straight answer world of NASA, the deniability is becoming increasingly difficult of a non-human presence on and around the moon. Astronauts have become the piggy in the middle of the debate between NASA and conspiracy theorists, as their jobs puts them in a very alluring position of being able to witness what goes on the moon and in space. Is this why certain astronauts are experiencing a significant loss of memory when it comes to their missions of moonwalks and missions? Like I said, I have never heard about this before. And I guess Edgar Mitchell actually wrote a book about his memory loss. One example is Edgar Mitchell, part of the Apollo 14, who holds the record for the longest continuous walk on the moon, 9 hours. In 1971, he became the sixth person to walk on the moon, yet after returning to Earth, he had completely lost his memory of what he did and saw on the mission. He had, in fact, become so mentally unstable, he sought the assistance of a professional therapist to regain his memory. Where had his memory gone? Had he witnessed an event so traumatic, so overwhelming, that his brain had buried it? Or had higher powers determined he would be unable to cope and remember them? Question. Evidence does exist to suggest he had contact with extraterrestrial artifacts. The Hasselblad photo number AS14-68-9493 taken by Mitchell on the moon shows a human face carved into a nearby rock, and perhaps this is why he wants that movie camera so bad. I don't know. Off the track, it says Edgar Dean Mitchell, a lunar module pilot on the sixth person to walk on the moon's surface, is being sued by NASA. NASA wants the Mitchell to return a camera that went to the moon on Apollo 14 mission. A lawsuit filed by the federal government on Thursday in South Florida federal court remains that the former astronaut tried to sell the camera in an auction. So, it goes on to say, in his autobiography, The Way of the Explorer, Mitchell also reveals that part of his mission was to use ESP on the flight with his fellow astronauts, or with alien races who are known to use ESP to communicate. Mitchell is not the only astronaut to experience memory loss. Pete Conrad, pictured left, was an American astronaut who flew several missions between 1965 and 1973. Deceased now, he once told reporters off the record that he was very frustrated because he simply couldn't remember what he'd done, and had come up with evasive, shallow one-liners about his time in space to cover up this problem. There is also a commentary from unknowledgeable black programs about the use of memory eraser. Eraser of one memory is not isolated to the astronaut corps. From personal testimony, it appears memory erasers was very active in the 1970s when former U.S. Navy member Michael Ralph was part of the Mars program for 20 years. In his book, The Mars Records, Ralph explains he was chosen at a young age due to his heightened sensory abilities and trained to work in the Mars colony, which had been set up so many years earlier. At the end of his service, his memory was efficiently hidden from his conscious mind and returned to Earth via the Stargate, a time travel facility created by the black programs of the U.S. government. Only with the assistance of his wife, who is a holistic kineologist, would he regain his memory. There remain plenty of good reasons why an astronaut's mind would have their memory of space missions erased, or at least hidden, as Michael Ralph was Although our knowledge of many conspiracy subjects has rapidly grown and expanded to a wider audience in the past 30 years, ever enlightened circles in the 1970s had no linking to extraterrestrial ruins on the moon. Only an elite group, which included the astronauts who set foot on the moon, was privileged to know this. Charles Brady, NASA astronaut who made his one and only shuttle flight in 1996 aboard the STS-78 Skylab after a successful mission, he returned to his Navy career only to commit suicide in 2006. French astronaut Claude Hageneri was a doctor who studied how humans adapt their motor and cognitive skills in weightlessness. On two missions to the Mir space station in 1996 and to the International Space Station ISS in 2001. Highly decorated, she attempted suicide in 2009 and had to be restrained after taking an overdose of sleeping pills while screaming, "Earth must be warned!" In strange circumstances, her laboratory where she had been working on human alien DNA experiments was destroyed in a fire within hours of her apparent attempted suicide. Boy, I tell you, if this doesn't get more bizarre, some eye-opening information. Suicide and memory are not isolated to the astronauts community. However, considering the extensive screening programs such people must endure, and their highly intelligent and education, the outcome of these astronauts have chosen seem out of place in the extreme. Other more highly profile astronauts such as Buzz Aldrin endured alcoholism and divorce, whereas Neil Armstrong became a veritable recluse, refusing to attend most celebrity occasions. What a troubled group of people. Show me a healthy, happy ex-astronaut, please. There may be many astronauts who can remember their missions. However, we may be hard-pressed to find former astronauts admitting to a significant loss of memory. Astronauts are losing their mental balance because they can't readjust after what they have seen in space. The reports of astronauts seeing UFOs in space is tame, considered what the Apollo 19 and 20 astronauts saw and photographed. Crashed alien crafts, destroyed alien cities, and aliens' body became the achievement of their missions. What did other astronauts do on their missions? What did they really see? And were they allowed to remember? And here's the article. I don't see a date. Alright, it says French first female astronaut in hospital after suicide attempt. Okay, she was hospitalized December 23rd, 2008 due to what appeared to be a suicide attempt. She was found in her Paris apartment by relatives in critical condition and rushed to the hospital where she was treated for overdose of medication. She studied biomechanical medicine and started her career in a Paris hospital, followed by working for the research laboratories of CNRS. She was the first French astronaut on the then USSR space station Mir, where she spent 2 weeks in orbit. She was named Deputy Minister for the Research Department of New Technologies. She did encounter much opposition due to her budget-keeping discipline that was, until then, without precedent. Oh, it says, moreover, within hours of her alleged suicide attempt, her laboratory where she worked on the forefront of human/alien DNA research as she studied biomechanical medicine at the world-renowned Pasteur Institute was destroyed by fire. And this article goes on to say, when we look more into the matter, we got shocked to know that not only one who tried to commit suicide, there are dozens of top scientists and literally 300 plus UFO researchers that have met with fatal incidents. And here's a list of all their names. I'm not going to even try and pronounce all their names, seeing how there's 50 of them. Holy cow. I'll give you a link to this web page. So then this article here, going into how she was screaming that the world had to be warned. It says, by the way, in the light of this strange affair, I wonder if the two French bioengineering research students slaughtered in July 2008 in London were somehow connected to the same kind of forbidding knowledge Ms. Hagery wanted to warn us about. Here's some more about that woman. FSB internal report on Dr. Hagery's state that since her return from space, she became convinced that our Earth had been visited in our history past by ancient astronauts who had not only colonized our planet, but had genetically engineered the then existing semi-human life forms into our present-day human race. Edgar Mitchell founded the Institute of Noetic Science in 1972. He began a quest for common ground between science and spirit following his life-altering experience of walking on the surface of the moon. Mitchell's autobiography book, The Way of the Explorer, describes in thrilling detail his experience with Apollo missions, as well as his subsequent exploration of the fields of consciousness and paranormal phenomenon. I was so moved by what Mitchell wrote about seeing Uri Geller bend spoons and bring lost objects across space and time that inspired me to see Geller bend one of my very solid stainless steel spoons in person in October of 1999. I love this book, Timeless Wisdom, Beauty, and Depth, so much I return to it again and again. It's a powerful book that touches my heart and greatly inspires me. So that's one review of the book. It says here he tells about his ESP experiments that he performed while in transit to the moon, as well as his theories about nature of human consciousness. He tells how he became convinced of the realities of paranormal events and tries to explain the events by rejecting the sacred cow of epiphenomenalism by intuiting that human consciousness is an integral part of the structure of the universe. And this one says how the trip to the moon altered his life and inner way of thinking regarding life and the universe. I tell you, this gets weirder and weirder. Edgar Mitchell asked Uri Geller if he would be so good as to retrieve a camera he left on the moon during the Apollo 14. Sure, Early would give it a try. After all, the moon is only 240,000 miles away. How hard can that be? Later, when they were dining in the SRI cafeteria, when Yuri cuts his lip on a sharp piece of metal. It's not the camera, but Mitchell's long-lost tie-tack. Thank God for that. And it goes on to talk about how another psychic on the spacecraft bent Mitchell's gold ring. I guess with just the use of his mind. Alright, so the more you look into it, you can look into yourself if you have the time. This gets weirder and weirder. Bookmark our site, and I'll give you a link to those 50 scientists that were involved with UFO and space that have died. I'll keep you up to date. Stay safe, and God bless everyone.